So they used to say that it's not the camera, it's the photographer, and I wanted to prove that point. For one reason or for another, I just came back from a trip and I didn't have my camera with me. I only have my crappy, cheap Motorola phone and the Chinese action cam that I'm not showing you, but if you missed the episode, you can find it up here. And I recorded good memories. So am I happy with that? Yes, I am. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thomas Love here from One and Solly, and today, well, I'm happy because I just came back from a trip. I visited Egypt and the Red Sea, and I was able to do some snorkeling and trip into the desert. I will show you some footage, but I was not taking my camera. I did not take my camera with me for that trip because I wanted to have more time to spend with the family. I wanted to play with my son, and I didn't want to camera for the sake of recording memories. I wanted to leave those memories. Nonetheless, every trip that you don't shoot photos of, it just lives in your memories. But then you cannot recall that detail, that experience. You cannot share with your family. You cannot share. I'm also sharing it with my son, and I will discuss these details later on. And so I chose to only travel with my phone and with the teeny tiny action cam with an underwater case, which I did not use, by the way. Why is that? Because I knew that most of the activities would have taken place with daylight, and so with daylight, even if you have a little tiny sensor like action cams or like smartphones, that's good enough. Now, you don't have separation because in the depth of field, it's almost everything is in focus, but it's good enough if you shoot consciously. So what they used to say, it's not the camera, it's the photographer, I have to say, I kind of agree with that, because before hitting record or the shutter button on the phone or on the camera or on any mean, because these are just means to an end to record memories, well, I never thought, log or to frame what story I want to tell, so that eventually all the B-roll can help me in structuring a sense out of the story that I want to share with you right now, that I'm sharing with you right now. So you can see what happens. You can see that from the beach I could access the reef already, and I didn't need to take any boat just to swim. You can see that you can visit the desert, and you can evaluate that it was a Rocky Mountains desert rather than a sandy desert on that part of the world. And you can see all the dust and all the sand that make good effects with lights, and then you can see that there were a few trees growing anyway in the desert, and then that they used Land Rover Jeep cars, and then we climbed mountains, and that we were exposed to sunsets, and all these kind of things put together and only recorded with a teeny tiny sensor, but thanks for that manual settings. So even if you're using a teeny tiny sensor like a smartphone, but you know your way around it, well, I could shoot pro-like photos. Of course, if you zoom in, you will see that the details are not there, that the dynamic range is not there. Look at the footage that I've taken with the action cam. You see it's burning the highlights and preserving the shadows. So it sacrificed the highlights from the sky and from the clouds. But that's a good enough choice for me, and that's a good enough result. So when you have a teeny tiny sensor and you don't have a dynamic range, you have to choose whether you want to preserve the shadows or the highlights, and what is most important, because with this compressed dynamic range you cannot cover the whole spectrum. So what story do you want to tell, and what are you focusing on? And then also, when you come back home and you are post-processing all the footage and all the photos, know that with such limited dynamic range, you cannot even do that much color correction. And so you need to really choose the Kelvin temperature spot in when you are recording. So there are a few more things that you need to take care of when you're using a limited means such as a smartphone. But then you have like the stabilization. in here, or you can do it while post-processing. And so all in all, I think that the results were good enough for a non-paid gig. If it's just for memories, it's true, it's not the camera, it's a photographer. I'm sure that all the pros that are watching this video right now, they know exactly what I'm talking about. All the choices that you make every time that you press the shutter release button, whether it is a photo or a video. I have to say I was happy enough because this Motorola has the Pro version for shooting photos, and so I could choose the Kelvin temperature, the shutter speed, and manage the ISO. And the same thing applies when you're recording videos, because with the Blackmagic camera app, I was able to set the exposure exactly how I wanted it. Now, I didn't bring the ND filter with me because it was an additional weight, an additional thing to babysit, and I didn't want to babysit my gear. But I have to say that for this kind of footage, even having a funky shutter speed like 1/1000, it was good enough, because it's not a slow motion anything. Now, if you are having a look at the footage that I recorded overnight, I was particularly surprised by it, because first I let the camera do all the settings by itself, and I saw that it was pumping the ISO way too much for this teeny tiny sensor, so it was quite dark. So I said, okay, let's jump in with manual recording, with manual settings, and taking down the ISO. Since it was a spectacle played with fire, there was plenty of light where the action was. And so in the same, we're always choosing whether we want to preserve the highlights or the shadows. I think that the fire gave me enough light to see where the action was, and in the very end the footage was clean, quite enough to be usable, to be decent. So please guys, let me know down here in the comments if you think that the photos and the footage that I recorded with these cheap means was good enough and usable, or if you think that I should always bring my camera with me. That is normally my favorite choice, but sometimes I just can't. So with that, I hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, please remember to like it, share it on your social media, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the reviews to come, and I guess I will see you later. Thank you. Bye bye.
Ein wirklich großes Problem und habe ihm hier 2 Kopf Dusche kostenfrei gegeben. Wirklich, damit ruhig sein. Habe ihm gesagt, das macht 5 Euro. Nimm mal das dann.